Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Spotlight. This is Dr. Jacqueline King, and I'm the founder and CEO of Black Women Empowered, a social media ministry network. We empower through education and spirituality and a host of other um, opportunities for us to empower you. So tonight, we are with Dr. Ajibade from the Brain and Body Foundation, and he's going to share some valuable information with you. Dr. Ajibade, how are you?
I'm doing well, Dr. King. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're honored to have you empower our listeners, and I'm sure that they're going to want to know what you have to share. So I know you have some stuff that you want to share. So let's see if we can go ahead and give you the opportunity to do that.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So I'll be sharing my screen now. Just let me know if you see my screen.
I do.
Okay. Well, again, Dr. King, thank you for this opportunity. I think this is a really, really important topic, especially for the Black community and people of color, people with darker skin, and especially at this time of the year. I think this is about February now. And this is a time when we are not outside. There isn't as much sun. Most of us are bundled up indoors. And of course, there's COVID-19. So that further restricts our movements, which makes us more vulnerable to not only COVID-19, but a host of other things as well. But children of the sun, otherwise called the vitamin D story, I got to tell you, I've worked in the United States. I lived and worked here for about 10 years, and then I went back to Nigeria, and I've been back for going on 9 years now. And as soon as I got back home to Nigeria about 9 years ago, Dr. King, things just started occurring to me. I was like, okay, why do we have more fibroids, for instance, among Black women? Because I was able to compare, right, between white and Black people in the States. And then, of course, back home, everybody's Black pretty much. So it just began to occur to me that there were some conditions that had more representation among the Black community, including cardiovascular disease, including strokes, including cancers. And I always used to wonder why. And another thing is that I wondered why no one was really talking about these things. So I began to search, and one of my answers is what I really want to talk about. Again, that's about vitamin D. And I'm highlighting cardiovascular disease because it is the number one killer in the world, as you know, Dr. King. Again, it is worse among Black people. And I'm just going to be reading a couple of quotes here and there, but here's an interesting one. Blacks develop high blood pressure earlier in life and with much higher blood pressure levels than whites. Nearly 42% of Black men and more than 45% of Black women aged 20 and older have high blood pressure. You're going to be seeing this recurring theme, Dr. King. It says Black are worse, but it says women are worse than men among the Blacks. And again, to me, it's startling because Black women, as we know, they're the backbone of our society. They're the ones who take care of the kids, take care of the men, the husbands. They're the ones who provide that stability in the home. And if there are so many of them being affected, then we got to do something about it, and we got to talk about it. And so again, this was bringing this up, and what I feel this topic is so important. A lot of times, doctors and people in general say it's all about the racism, it's all about the disparity in healthcare, it's all about poverty and socioeconomics, so it's all about politics. And to some degree, that is true. But if we only leave it at that, what happens? It just becomes another political discussion, another political talking point. We don't get to look at it critically and therefore address the things that we should address. So absolutely, socioeconomics plays a role. It doesn't play the only role. Because again, I mean, if you think about it, there are Blacks, everybody in Nigeria pretty much is Black. They're the rich, they're the poor. Cancer, heart diseases are affecting all strata of society. So it's not just about racism. There's got to be something that is intrinsic to who we are as Black people, or maybe even to our genes. that is making us more prone to this. And I love this quote because this is by a doctor at the FDA who said this in sharp contrast to their white counterparts. Blacks, by the way, Dr. King, please feel free to chime in, ask a question.
Okay.
I love this quote. It says, in sharp contrast to their white counterparts, blacks have a much higher incidence and mortality of certain types of aggressive cancers and autoimmune diseases, including diabetes, that cannot be attributed entirely to socio-economic differences or to disparities in healthcare. So it's what she's basically saying is that there must be other things. And one of the things we're finding out is vitamin D3. And some of the things, I just want to quickly point out some of the things that we are beginning to find out are related to low vitamin D3. Again, Dr. King, why isn't everybody talking about this? Because vitamin D is such a simple and safe approach. If I had my way in Nigeria, in Africa, in the US, I would say everybody from the age of 20 should start supplementing, probably even earlier than that, should start supplementing with vitamin D. We're even using vitamin D with sickle cell disease patients, and we're having great results. So hypertension, coronary heart disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer, different kinds of cancers, obesity, even gum disease, periodontal disease. And yes, we know vitamin D, traditionally we know vitamin D is important for the bones and the teeth, but it's important for so much more than that, including the immune system, including the cardiovascular system. We'll talk about that some more. I have this man, Creflo Dollar, because he went public with his struggle with cancer. He had aggressive prostate cancer, I believe, before the age of 40. So as this man, some of you know, most of you know, that's Dr. Ben Carson, the former head secretary and neurosurgeon. Who I wanted to be a neurosurgeon as a kid, as a budding medical student, but he had aggressive prostate cancer as well before the age of 40. These are people who are not affected by the socioeconomic problems with healthcare, and yet they, along with many other men, by the way, prostate cancer is the number one. Black men are most prone to prostate cancer in the world. Everywhere you go to in society, Black men have the highest amount of prostate cancer, bar none. And that's me when I actually met him. So you are looking at several things. So this is like a diagram that tells who is more susceptible to vitamin D deficiency. You have a chronic disease like diabetes, you are older, over 40, you live in the northern parts of the US, they call it the 37th latitude, 37th parallel. Over and above that, you live in New England, you live in Wisconsin, you're going to have less exposure to vitamin D, less exposure to the sunlight, specifically the UVB, ultraviolet B rays. That is super important for the creation of vitamin D in the skin by the human being. Now, here's the problem. We Black people have a lot more melanin, which gives us the color, than white people do. And what that melanin does is that it blocks out the sun's rays. And therefore, you are not able to make vitamin D the way a white person or a pale-skinned person would. This is not something to complain about or whine about. This just means it's important for you to know. And this slide here, I talk about the importance of vitamin D, what vitamin D is used for. Vitamin D actually is not just a vitamin, it's actually it's almost like a hormone. They call it a pre-hormone. And what it does is that they found that it regulates about 1/10 of our genes. We have over 20,000 genes, so over 2,000 genes are regulated by vitamin D. And amongst the things that vitamin D regulates are the immune system, the cardiovascular system, the brain. In fact, what they're finding out, Dr. King, is that women, especially Black women who don't have enough vitamin D, are more likely to have children with autism and other learning disabilities when they grow up.
Really?
Yes, because what is in the mother's blood is what translates into the baby's blood. If the mother's blood is deficient in vitamin D, the baby will not develop like it should because it doesn't have enough vitamin D for the development of its nervous system. Not just the nervous system, the cardiovascular system, the bones, the gastrointestinal system as well. So there's a lot of research now looking into what was happening in the mother that could have caused a child to be autistic or be on the autistic spectrum have a learning disability. This is super, super important. I had this quick slide here. Well, it's not a quick slide, it's a slide. And on the left column, you see the different skin types or skin tones. They label them from 1 to 6, from the lightest, which are the pale-skinned, pasty white people, to the darker-skinned people like me. And basically, the idea is this: the paler your skin is, the more your skin is like type 1, the easier it is for you to make vitamin D. The darker your skin is, the more difficult it is for you to make vitamin D. And this further explains it right here. It says the paler your skin type, the more easily your skin can produce vitamin D. And for example, if you have skin type 1, it might take around 15 minutes of sun exposure to get the vitamin D you need for that day. If you have skin type 5 or 6, it might take 5 or 6, that's most of us Black people. It might take up to 6 times longer, up to 2 hours. Think about that.
Wow.
And we're not even exposing, I mean, some of us go out in the sun where we think we're out in the sun, but we're all covered up. Or we're in a car and we think, oh, the sun's rays are shining through the car. Well, guess what? The glass, the car's glass or windscreen filters out the important rays, the UVB rays that are necessary for your skin to make vitamin D. So if you're wearing clothes, you're indoors, even if it's all glass, even if you're in a greenhouse, you are not making vitamin D because the rays are being blocked out. I think this is super important for people to know. Okay, we've also talked about age. The older you are, especially above the age of 40, which both Dr. King and I are, we are less likely to make vitamin D like a 20-year-old. So, and I just had this diagram just showing all the different systems that are affected: the brain, the kidneys, the lungs, and so on and so forth. I like this diagram here, Dr. King, because this paints it in graphic detail. You have 2 mice from the same litter, 2 pups, I think they call them, from the same litter, same genes. You can see they both look identical up here. In one of them, they found a way to block out its ability to create and make vitamin D. That's the one on the left. So after a few months, you see the difference. The pup or the mouse on the right still looks as healthy, has lush white skin, white fur, looks bulky and all that. The mouse on the left looks shriveled up. It looks weak. It's lost most of its hair. It doesn't look like it's going to survive for much longer. I don't think there could be a better picture of the importance of vitamin D than this one. Again, you really want to consider vitamin D, not just for disease or sickness, but it is just the rational, reasonable thing to do. If you know, if you're Black and if you know that you have, you're not out in the sun much and you're over the age of 40, you must, it's just a common sense thing to do, to take vitamin D. This is also important in COVID-19. What we're finding out now, and this is research that's been done all over the world now, Dr. King, whether in Israel, in the US, in the UK, in Indonesia, in the Orient, in Asia, they're finding out that those who have the most moderate, from moderate to most severe forms of vitamin D, and those who die, those who have the more severe forms, moderate to more severe forms of COVID-19, and those who die from COVID-19 are almost without exception deficient in vitamin D. Those who had sufficient levels of vitamin D before they were infected or contracted COVID-19, those are the ones who have the milder forms of COVID-19 and almost always survive the COVID-19.
Wow.
And you saw in the United Kingdom too, in fact, they were saying as much as 4 times the deaths of white people, Black people were having that. Now, they were all pointing to the fact that they're the menial workers, they're the ones who are out in the open more, they're the ones in contact with the public and all that. And that, of course, could be a factor. But why aren't they also talking about vitamin D? I don't understand it. And if you look at it, the top factors for COVID-19 severity: age, obesity. The heavier you are, the less vitamin D you're going to make. That's a rule. Cardiovascular disease, hypertension, diabetes, pulmonary disease, if you already have it. Um, this is one in COVID-19. This is one area in which women health-wise have an advantage over men, and that's when it comes to COVID-19. Significantly more numbers of men die from COVID-19 than women do. Of course, if you have if you have dark skin, you are more susceptible to COVID-19, and if your blood group is blood group A as opposed to O and B. I don't know why. I've asked my friends who are pulmonologists and who are practicing here. They really don't have an answer for me either. So it's still conjecture as far as we're concerned. So it just makes sense to take ample enough amounts. And now the statistics say you can't take anything, especially if you're Black. I mean, they got this number for white people. And the new recommendation, I know the FDA and the required dietary allowance is still saying 600 to 800 international units. But the people who know, people who have done the research, who have gone to Africa and other parts of the world, they are saying that that is too low. You need at least 5,000. I say nothing less than 10,000. That is my recommendation. I'm on TV in Nigeria. I talk about it all the time. Especially during this COVID-19 time, you really, really want to. I would rather be caught, if COVID-19 were to catch me, I would rather it caught me with too high levels of vitamin D than too low levels. What do you think, Dr. King?
That's very interesting. Yeah, I think that, I mean, this is good information, and you and I talked about it. You told me 10,000. I told you I was taking 1,000. I've upped it. I'm not quite at 10 yet, but I've upped it quite a bit.
Well,
But
good.
this is good information. I had no idea that vitamin D was directly connected to COVID.
You
But
know, it's interesting. Tyler Perry too came on. He came on and he did a skit on Instagram, and he said, please, he went to see his dermatologist in LA, and he said, guys, you need to take vitamin D. And he went on out in public to say his vitamin D levels were low. I think he mentioned either Oprah had low vitamin D levels as well. And he was begging the Black community, take vitamin D, especially during this COVID-19 times. It could save your life. So I just wanted to end this part, Dr. King. Did you want to say something?
no, I think that's great information. I hope that our audience, takes this serious, and because we are losing a lot of our people to COVID.
Up until now, I mean, are we? It's still a big issue with the community, right?
Yeah, a lot of we're still losing a lot of Black people are dying with it, and a lot of it has to do with obesity and I
Diabetes, hypertension,
know. I'm sorry.
diabetes, hypertension, chronic disease. You think?
All of it, all of it.
Yeah. So in addition to vitamin D, I would also recommend vitamin C. They're doing research on that as well. Vitamin C helps with the immune system, as with vitamin D. And really, COVID-19, if anything, is a failure of the immune system. If the immune system was working like it should, if all our immune systems were working like they should, we would be able to stop COVID-19 at the level of here, the throat upwards, because that's the way COVID-19 comes in. Comes in through the mouth, comes in through the nose. The immune system is there waiting to stop the further progression. And if our immune systems are working like they should, it should stop it at that point. So the worst you should get, problems you have is zinc. Loss of smell, loss of taste, maybe a little cough, a fever, maybe. If the immune system is working like it should, it shouldn't allow it to go to the lung and cause the damage that it's causing.
It's interesting because my neighbors, I was out yesterday shoveling, and my neighbor, who is 67, her husband is 72, they both got COVID, and he has cancer,
Oh,
and he
wow.
survived.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
and he went in remission with his cancer. Now, my stepmother has COVID. She's in the hospital now. She's been in there for 3 weeks, and she just came off the respirator.
She was on the respirator for 3 weeks.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, thank God she made it. I've heard that well, ventilators, maybe not respirators, but ventilators.
I mean, that's I meant the ventilator.
The ventilator, okay. Um, the statistics aren't good if you have to go on a ventilator. So she's surviving. That's good, and thank God for that. So it's important. I mean, right now, when I'm back in Nigeria, I say go to the pharmacies. Pharmacies should be stocking up with vitamin D. Yes, they should stock up with sanitizers and such, but also vitamin D and vitamin C and fiber. The reason why I mentioned fiber, especially psyllium husk flakes, is that the majority of your immune system is based in the gut, in the digestive system. And this is another story for another time, Dr. King. But I don't want to end this without saying this. The good bacteria in the gut, in the digestive system, help with your immune system. The more buoyant and more vibrant your good bacteria are, the healthier your immune system will be. There's one kind of symbiotic relationship. And for your good bacteria to be healthy and buoyant and vibrant, they need to be fed. And fiber is one of the very best foods you can give them. Yes, you can get them from fruits and vegetables, but it's not always enough. So I just say let's just take a shortcut. And there's what fiber I always get from whole foods that helps to feed the good bacteria, and it certainly boosts the immune system. So definitely can make recommendations on those as well. So that is my that's our story so far, Dr. King. I'm gonna hand this back to you.
Well, I think that's good. Like I said, good information. We want to keep feeding our community with good information. These are some things that a lot of doctors will never tell you.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I had to quickly. No, I've handed it back to you, but I just wanted to say this real quick too. I have a friend who just moved to, I believe, Tulsa, Oklahoma, from up north, and he wants to do his yearly checkup, and he's a medical doctor, so he's very educated, and of course, finances shouldn't be a problem. So he wants to do his medical checkup, and he takes the time to look for a Black doctor like him who understands his needs or should understand his needs. And they run all the tests, and he sits down with the doctor and they go through everything. And so I asked him, did they check your vitamin D levels? And he said, no. And in my mind, I'm like, you went through all this trouble to get a Black doctor, and a Black doctor can't tell you this? That is disappointing, to say the least. Dr. King? Hello? Looks like we lost him. All right, folks. I am going to round this up here. Thank you so much for. Okay.
What happened?
I don't know. I just saw that we lost you. Anyway, I just told the story about my doctor friend whose Black doctor, did not say anything about vitamin D, especially in the winter. So it's something that definitely needs a wide scale education.
Well, I thank you for this information. And we're going to look forward to you empowering us with some great information as we move forward. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
And we thank everybody for listening, and we'll be back.
Are you there?